I'm Jimmy Lewis. This is Dave Donatoni. We're with Dirt Bike Test, and today we're going to talk about the 2019 Yamaha WR450F. This is our preview video. We haven't done the full test yet because we're still working on it. This is my fourth or fifth day on the bike. Dave's second day on the bike. So our bike isn't totally stock right now. We've done some modifications to it, but it's the kind of modifications we expect most riders to do. I got a chance to ride this bike not totally stock because we all know what that is. About a quarter throttle, the intake is heavily restricted, and there's like my pinky wouldn't fit through the exhaust opening, and that's stock. I don't think that most riders will ride it like that, although I'm sure some will. The bike will run like that. I don't know why you would ride it like that, but it does meet all the regulations that way. So the way I did ride it was the smallest restrictor was removed from the muffler, and the intake restriction was moved out of the airbox, and the throttle stop was removed, so now I had full throttle. And when we did that, all of a sudden the bike comes to life, and it runs almost as good as a stock Honda Sierra 450X, which throttle opens all the way, and it meets all the regulations. So it's Yamaha's way of making an emissions compliant, sound compliant motorcycle, and sound is the key here. Sound is the thing that is causing these bikes to be so heavily restricted. So in the state that we have our bike, and the state it currently still is, it meets the sound requirements to have essentially a California green sticker, so it's quiet. We still have the stock muffler on it, but now our bike has the Yamaha GYTR Competition ECU, and that is, I don't know, it's a special part that you can get through their catalog, and it allows, the awesome thing, tuning through your phone. So now you can adjust maps, ignition, and fuel timing through the phone, and it sort of unlocks the ECU, and it comes stock with sort of a more aggressive mode. In fact, the recommended map that Yamaha gave me to try with the stock muffler is leaner than stock. So it's actually set up, and they're expecting you to put a different muffler on. We're going to do that in the near future, but we're going to talk about the bike the way it kind of sits today, and I'll chime in with how it compares to stock. Dave, you weren't a fan.
No, at first I was not.
At first.
I'm going to say at first I was not.
So just to say, the first ride we went on was a pretty extreme, technical, rocky desert ride, and the bike was set up mostly completely stock, but with my ride height, and so I'm a little bit heavier. I'm 200 pounds. Dave's 165, and it just beat you up.
It beat me up. Well, I wouldn't even really call it a desert ride. I mean, it was pretty slow going, very technical, tough.
So there weren't trees we were riding. We were actually out in the desert, but it was a lot of single track. And if you know me, when people think desert, they think fifth and sixth gear.
No, we're riding first and second gear.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, this doesn't have a sixth gear.
Okay.
So we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But it was really technical desert ride. There was some faster stuff, but the bike was jarring, and I didn't notice it as much as you did, but you were ready to get the screwdriver out.
I was ready to get the screwdriver out immediately. I just felt like the bike was just too stiff for what we were riding, and Jimmy was resisting. He didn't want me to move stuff around too much.
No, I didn't. I just wanted to make sure you were on point with that.
But slowly but surely we.
So just from then to now, we're out 3 on
the rebound.
3 on the rebound front and rear, and 4 on the compression front and rear.
Yeah.
And it's definitely much better, but there's a few more things. So, and here's the other thing that kind of compounds it. Compared to completely stock, or not completely stock, but the stock ECU, this bike is pretty snappy and very responsive. The throttle, it is very responsive.
It's too responsive for what we were doing the first day.
Correct, for most of the time.
Yeah.
So we were constantly trying to kill it, and there's a 2 position. The other thing that's really cool with the competition tuner is you can add the map position switch. It's a single push button that allows you to change from map 1 and map 2. Map 1 is standard, map 2 is a, quote, mellow map. So internally they're different. So if you put the same map into both maps, map 1 and 2 will still be different. And I don't necessarily think I like that. I would like them to be the same and allow me to decide if I want to make it more aggressive or leaner.
Yeah.
and I've been trying to learn how to make map 1 and map 2 the same, so I could, you know, compensate for that in the tuning. But the tuner really works. You can feel it.
There's a difference, but you don't feel it in the first eighth or quarter of throttle. You feel it more.
It's like in the mid.
It's in the mid range where you feel it more.
Yeah, the difference between map 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But even there, so we were kind of trying to kill the bottom end, the throttle response, just to make it a little bit smoother, and then we were trying to make it so that when you hit that mid, it wasn't so dead.
Yeah.
And then top, we weren't really riding there too much until today. I kind of used it a little bit, you know, when I had the chance. But you're just, you know, blend it. But the cool thing is it takes a few minutes to make a map, and we have some really good base maps. And I'm sure it's only going to get better when we start playing with mufflers, because I know that muffler is very restrictive.
Yeah.
But overall, I think some of that aggressiveness, the stiffness, it's part of the suspension, which we solved with that, and moving the thing, and some of the motor. So it's a combination, and that's why when we'll separate this and break it down when we get to our full test, but we're still playing with it. But other than that, it's a stiff chassis, not stiff in a bad way, but stiff in kind of a good way.
It is stiff in a good way.
And so it really makes the suspension work. We know the Yamaha suspension is good. It's just been set up a little bit more on the race side.
It's a race bike with the stock settings. It is very racy, and if you're a racer, you're gonna love it.
Yeah, and before, if you're a racer, it was like, don't even look at the WR, go for the FX. The FX was the race bike, and the WR was just the trail bike. But the WR always felt heavy and dead, and this bike does not feel heavy.
Not at all.
And does not feel dead.
No, it is nimble and light.
Yeah, for a 450.
Feeling.
Yeah. When you ride it back to back with the KTM 350.
Well, then it feels a little bit
Correct.
bigger and taller, but it's a 450.
Yeah. So the other things we did that we started liking is we moved the bars into the forward mounting position, because it feels like it's kind of cramped. It almost feels like the seat's actually pretty low.
I agree.
And when you sit down into the bike, which is great if you can stay sitting, but if you're sitting and standing and sitting and standing, you go, man, the seat's a little bit low. So it got a little bit cramped, so we put the handlebars in the forward position. That helped a little bit. I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit taller of a seat, especially kind of in the middle part of the seat. Maybe not in the forward part, because I don't mind getting really forward, but I sit down, and even on the middle or the back of the seat, I go, it's like I get way down.
I mean, I agree, and I'm fairly short.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be a little bit cramped for taller riders. Definitely going to be looking for a taller seat. Yamaha's definitely worked, because this is like the 2018 YZ450. That's what it's based off of, and they've worked on really thinning the package. It's a lot more narrow looking up under the airbox, which is here, and that brings up another point. What do you like about that?
Well, I really don't like the sound of the intake in the first eighth of throttle, because it's very loud and it's distracting to me. But as soon as you can grab a little more throttle, it sounds bitchin'.
It goes away.
Yeah.
It like sucks the sound back into the motor.
Then it
right?
sounds like a regular motorcycle, but it sounds like you have a snorkel.
Yeah.
On.
So as a self-confessed Husaberg lover that also has the air filter between your legs right here, I like that noise sometimes. Other times I hate it. Here's why you notice it so much: because the exhaust is so quiet. Now you're actually hearing the intake noise.
That's true.
And it actually makes the whole motor sound a little bit like rattly and noisy, because the muffler is so quiet. But that's first wah, that snort.
When we were riding the very technical stuff, you're riding that first eighth of throttle, a quarter of throttle, and the intake is very loud.
Yeah.
As soon as you can grab some throttle, it goes away.
But it's almost distracting.
But it's
you're
distracting.
trying to, because that's when you're really trying to concentrate, and your bike's going, gas it.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird, awkward sound.
Yeah. So let's run through quickly. The complaints is the noise.
The noise.
Well, we got the suspension working pretty damn good, but stock, it's a little bit kind of stiff.
It's too stiff for a guy my size. And the way I like to ride.
Yeah, and being lighter, for me, being a little bit heavier, I think they did a pretty good job with the suspension settings. And everything, you got to realize, everything is going to that more aggressive setting. And that's the trend. That's where things are going. I don't think it's going to go crazy, and we're not going to. It's nothing. If you took a motocross bike and rode it and compared it to this, it'd be completely different. You would say this thing's really plush and active.
Yeah.
But compared to, like, say, a KTM with the PDS suspension, the open cartridge fours, it's still a little bit stiffer. So they're kind of balancing it, but the trend is to go more aggressive. Other than that, I might complain a little bit about fuel capacity. The bike is definitely easy to work on. That air filter is easy to get to.
Yeah. The gas, it's easy to put gas in the tank.
Yeah, you got to pop the seat off and the gas tank is down there.
Yeah.
But it could use a little more fuel capacity. They did increase it a little bit compared to the old one, which is really nice. But it's not as easy to put bigger tanks on this particular bike. And we'll have to see what happens when we start changing the mufflers. We're going to come up with some really good maps. But I think the number one thing that this has going for it when you put the competition ECU is the use of that Yamaha power tuning app, which is free. And all of a sudden, I mean, you may just want to have somebody send you a map. I geek out. I tune and play around with my phone, and like while we were out riding, I was sending different maps. Hey, Dave, try this.
We changed the mapping on the trail in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, 4 or 5 times.
And it was really cool to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it made a big difference.
Yeah, and to be able to switch between, have 2 different maps. It's easy to switch on the fly. I think, and we've loved this on the YZ450. We loved it on the new YZ250F. It's awesome on this, and it's really good that, since we're going to use this in a competition setting, we can put the competition ECU on it, and now we're going to turn it into a race bike, because that's where I think it's heading. So overall, pretty happy. I would say, and here's the big question: is it as good as the Honda 450X? And you don't know.
I don't know. That's true. So you're gonna have to answer that,
because he hasn't ridden it yet. But they're 2 different things, and here's it to break it down. If you're riding in 1st gear, 2nd gear, 3rd gear, and a little bit in a 4th gear, this is a better bike. If you're riding in 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th, and 6th, this doesn't have a 6th, and that's another thing. Yamaha's done a really good job. Did you complain about transmission ratios?
Well, the spacing was a little awkward for me, I have to admit. I was kind of struggling between gears at times, and I was shifting more than I thought I should have to.
Was that, could we fix it with the ignition?
I think the ignition would help.
Yeah.
Changing the mapping would help it.
Yep.
But when the original mapping we had, I was shifting more than I thought I needed to. I was struggling.
Yeah, the map I have in there now, I think, is really good. But back to that, so this doesn't have a 6-speed, but Yamaha's done a really good job with the 5 speeds, putting it all together, having a wide ratio of 5-speed. But if you're in lower gears, the Honda seems to be a little bit more tailored for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th higher speed stuff. It's just happier there. This is happier and tighter, more technical stuff, and that's the big difference between these 2 bikes. But we'll explain that a little bit more. We'll probably do a comparison, and when we get done testing more stuff, because we don't test it in 10 minutes like everybody else, we actually use the bike and ride it. We'll get you the full test on Dirt Bike Test. So we will see you out on the trail. Yeah, the clutch, it's that lever right there.
You pull this one in to cover it so you don't stall?